Hello, everybody. Welcome to Voices of Recovery. Today's guest is Sean Bryan, and I'm your host, Gregory Greer. Today's guest, everybody, is Sean Bryan. And I want to share before we start communicating today, my thoughts on this gentleman is I've always thought he is a brilliant clinician. And at one point in time, I have been incredibly intimidated. So I am thrilled, overjoyed, and ecstatic that Sean has come on board today to talk about us with working in the professional community with substance use disorders. So with that being said, Sean Bryan. Sean Bryan, welcome, and again, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So if I haven't told you, this whole shindig is trying to unite all the recovery professional community and without being competitive from one treatment center to the other, and then the population we serve. So last week, there was somebody, or the last episode, we had somebody on that was a patient who went through the professional program, and then this whole process is, I guess, about us, how we got here. Like, how come we even do what we do? So for starters, can you share as far as your position, where you work, what your job title?
So I'm in a new position. I am the compliance officer at Palmetto Addiction Recovery Center, and that's been going on for about 3 weeks, 4 maybe. But before that, I was a counselor there for 13 years.
13 years. You're a licensed professional counselor in LPC.
Correct.
Wow. Well, that is a huge change for one. Being a counselor to go into compliance officer. So my first thought is that I just get really sick of people.
Yes. I mean, I needed to feel like I had some upward lift in the trajectory of my career. And I needed to feel like I was doing something different. I know I may look really young and really virile, but I've been doing this for 18 years, and it was a time, to experience another side of the business.
So you've been a counselor at Palmetto for that many years?
13 years at Palmetto, 18 years total.
Where else did you work before that?
So I interned at Bastrop Predictive Disorders Clinic and Southern Oaks Addiction Recovery, heretofore referred to as SOAR. And at Dr. Mitchell Young's clinic,
wow,
doing multiple offense DWI offender groups under contract with the DA's office, and doing group therapy with veterans with PTSD under contract from the VA. Then when I graduated, I worked at a psychiatric hospital inpatient for 6 months. They were at the time referred to as Lily and Louise Behavioral Health. Then I moved to their IOP, and I did that for 3 months. And then I went back to SOAR, worked there for 3.5 years until government cutbacks led to all facilities like that being closed. Then I worked at the Wellspring, providing counseling to women and children who had experienced domestic abuse and sexual assault. And then I went to work at Palmetto.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating because the majority of your career is the substance use disorder field, addictions disorders. There's a brief moment with the Wellspring, which I find that to be valuable. Not too many males, and I have a brief stint working with female survivors of domestic violence at the Family Justice Center. And so I think that's an honor. And I think that speaks a lot to you of being trusted to work in that environment.
And I reaped tremendous benefits from it. I learned a lot from it. It made me a feminist, and my wife helped with that. I learned so much. I think it was one of the most formative things in the therapy that I did until 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I think I learned a tremendous amount about some of the things that a lot of our population have gone through and are going through.
Well, I would like to speak to how you got in this field, because the majority of your career practice is in addiction. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of high burnout, I guess. But I think a lot of people don't know how to do self-care, mm-hmm. is my interpretation of that. So it's like, how do I get in this field to begin with? So I've always asked people, as either A, they're in addiction, so they're trying to work on themselves, or 2, do they come from a family of origin that had addiction in it, and so therefore they're trying to fix them? And that's what they call countertransference in some contexts. So I don't know. How did you find yourself going into this field?
So I'm going to go in intervals.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, so I'm not in recovery, but when I was in high school, my senior year, so like I grew up in a very evangelical, very, very controlled household. I was raised by my grandparents. They were very strict. And my senior year, I said, the hell with that, and I busted out. And I remember the moment where I tried to connect with people a little bit more in high school. It was my junior year, finals for my English class, and the teacher in that class, very formative, and I'm going to talk about her a bit. Her name was Miss Harkleroad, but she was very strict with a lot of people. And I said, Miss Harkleroad, as she was handing out the finals, can we just blow off this test and go get loaded? And it was like a needle scratch moment. And everybody was like, oh, my God, he's going to die. And she laughed, and everybody started laughing as soon as she kind of gave it permission. And I was like, I like that. I like that. And so my senior year, I really blew off a lot of things, and I started smoking a lot of weed. And I think a lot of people in my very small high school class thought that I was going to be the burnout, that I was going to be the one that fell apart. And 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I remember it vividly, I just stopped. It was me and my friend at his house and another guy, and we were in his front yard smoking pot, and all these cars were going by, and I just had a moment of clarity, and I was like, this is insane. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to lose my scholarship. I'm going to ruin everything that I've worked for my whole life. And I just handed it over to my friend, and I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And I walked away, and I've never touched drugs since then. And as I got a little bit older, I started seeing people that I went to school with, and they weren't looking too good. And I come from a very depressed town that is very depressing, a town where there isn't a lot of hope left. And
that sounds so grim.
It did. I
just
made
want
that
to know
sound,
why you were talking about that.
There are robots with guns and
dark
stuff.
Cloud
it's
was
awful.
coming over. I was just like, wow.
There's toxic waste everywhere. Bastrop.
Dang, I was going to ask you, is this a secret? We can't talk about this.
It's a mill town where everything was about the mill, and the mill was dying, and then it finally died. And there's not a lot of stuff going on in Bastrop right now. Somebody from Bastrop is probably listening to this and saying, I'm going to kill him when I see him at Walmart. But
I'm pretty sure they're all hip going, yeah, we know.
My girlfriend's from Bastrop.
There are some good things in Bastrop. But
so we talked about the dark cloud over there.
So what I'm saying is that I saw these people that used to be like brilliant and athletic and charming, and they didn't look like they were doing so hot. And I would hear rumors about these people that I used to care about, that I went to school with, that they're not doing well. And I was like, I want to help. And when I got to college, like my entire life, I'd been told, you're going to go to college. And then when I got to college, I was like, I'm here, like mission accomplished. What comes next? And everybody was like, radiology. It's 4 years. It's good money. Do radiology.
That's right.
And so I signed up for it, and then I looked at the curriculum, and I was like, God, this is a lot of math. I hate math. And I had to take intro to psychology, and I loved it, and it made sense. And that same teacher, Miss Harkleroad, she was my psychology teacher in high school, and I loved that class, and it meant a lot to me. And she was also my guidance counselor, and she helped me so much. And so I switched my major to psychology. When I told everybody, they were like, no, don't, but I did it anyway. That was probably the most defiant thing I'd ever done in my life up to that point.
When you say defiant, and I'm going to interrupt just a second, because you said I was raised with an what was that word? Evangelical?
Highly evangelical.
Yeah, that. And it's like, so I worked with a client who was raised in a very strict religious background. It was Pentecostal, but and there's different facets of it, if that's correct. And it was like in the early ages of 6 and 7, if you didn't behave a certain way, you're going to hell. And they would talk about Jesus condemning them, etc. But look, again, it's just about that one particular facet. But it was very traumatizing for them growing up with that way. So when you say strict, and I'm wondering, you're saying that was the first defiant thing I'd ever done. Does that speak to that dynamic?
Most defiant thing I'd ever done. I had an earring at this point. That's a little rebellious.
Well, in certain southern biblical, in certain southern demographics, maybe.
Yeah.
But what
for
year?
For me, yeah. It was defiant from me, and I had bleached hair that was long. I was very 90s. I was very of my time. But can you reframe the question? I kind of got off my own track there.
No. I was just wondering because it was defiant, because you said it was real strict, growing up. And I was just wondering if it was because of the religiosity in the home, because that was the strictness, or, somebody had to have been real thumb-like for me to be.
Just everybody expected me to do something tremendous, and everybody was afraid that I was throwing away my education on a pipe dream that wouldn't make me any money. Everybody was very scared. And most of the people in my family don't really understand what I do even to this day. And so it was a lack of understanding of what psychology is, what therapy is, and what it can do for people and for the world. Now, my family is totally stoked on what I do now, but they still don't understand it.
I got you. So then you went into the field noticing how other people weren't doing well, and you said the world. So I hear idealism, hope, because I came from a town that was hopeless, and so you wanted to be, forgive the metaphor, a bright light.
But that goes into other things, and these are things that I didn't recognize in myself until later, because I remember, I know you want to talk about countertransference, and the biggest, quicksand trap that therapists fall into when it comes to countertransference is these feelings are intense, and a lot of people mistake intensity for intimacy, and they end up in sexual relationships with their patients. If you go on the LPC board's website and you look under, actions against license, like 90% of them or more are sex with patients.
So since you brought up the term countertransference, which is one of my favorite, what would be your definition? And I'm saying that to those in the audience that are seeking to be a CIT or enrolled with LACT, with the LA LASAC, because those education, some of it's taught and some of it's not, and some people may not. So I don't know. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Countertransference is a therapist's transference. And first, it's easiest to understand looking at it from a client's perspective. A client's transference is, I respond to you as if you were someone else that was a significant figure from my life that I had unfinished business with. And it's the same thing for a therapist. I'm in therapy, and something that my client is going through is reminiscent of something that I was going to say I have gone through, but maybe I haven't gone through it and should have gone through it. Maybe I haven't concluded it. And I start meeting my needs, my therapeutic needs, through the therapeutic relationship. I might start guiding the topic of discourse into areas that finish off my unfinished business. Ain't he an asshole? And that's kind of leading your client into a direction that they may not have gone into if it weren't for you and your issues coming out, all over the place.
So you brought up countertransference to those that's early in being a counselor, and the boundaries are lacked, and they get into inappropriate relationships, etc. So do you have a story of your own with countertransference that really speaks to that?
So I tend to get overly sympathetic with people that have stories of being bullied. So that's one, because I caught a good bit of it in like my earlier high school years. And I'm not going to go into specifics of the person because it's not my story to tell. But I love someone that is a member of the LGBTQ community, and sometimes it can be very hard to hear their stories. And I do, I want to say that it's a little bit of social justice warrior stuff rising up righteous in me, but it's probably a little bit of that too,
Well, I think being able to advocate for somebody is appropriate.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say getting on a soapbox. I think it's appropriate.
Yeah.
And so you're wanting to speak on someone's behalf, but the countertransference in the group on your part. So you either saw bullying growing up, or you yourself were bullied.
Oh, I was a recipient. Yes.
A recipient. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
great. So that's what you relate to, and so therefore, you're there to, forgive the term, rescue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, I'm not there for it, but if I don't watch out, I can end up in that place.
Thank you.
Yes.
Correcting me. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, real quickly, in the middle, I'm looking at our time. I want to just share that our sponsors for today happens to be Palmetto Addiction Recovery Center. And for those out there that are seeking help with addiction, substance use disorders, co-occurring, that Palmetto Addiction Recovery Center is available, and a number that you can call, area code 318-728-2970. They're a 100-bed facility. How many acres? There's an amazing bayou moat around it. It's very beautiful. Maybe an alligator too, so not too many clients are known to try to leave in that manner. But they've been around since 1993. 1993. They work with all insurances, very known for working with professionals. Doctors, attorneys, lawyers, pharmacists, etc. Again, that's Palmetto Addiction Recovery Center, 318-728-2970. And that is where, Sean, you have worked for 13 years, mm-hmm. and grown your own professional development while you're there. And we talked about countertransference. Mm-hmm. And so I guess, and you got into this because of seeing others in their addiction. What would be your most challenging? Because you said in the beginning that you've moved into another area with quality assurance, and so getting out of that, what's been the most challenging part of working with this population? For you, obviously.
There is no other healthcare or helping profession where you meet so much resistance. If somebody, shows up and they need treatment for cancer, presumably they're going to go ahead and receive that treatment. Of course, I guess I'm maybe painting with too wide of a brush. They might not quit smoking like their doctor told them to, but with the addicted population, people come in for help, and then when they see what help is, what constitutes help, they're like, well, not that though. So I guess the resistance. I know that's kind of a broad answer.
Well, here's what I heard. The resistance is the most challenging thing. And so if I were to say, if I were you, I'd say, man, that's pretty frustrating.
Certainly can be.
Certainly can be.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So for you, would you have any, so a broad pain of the brush is frustrating. I always look at some of the people that frustrated me the most. I mean, I've had people, take their notebook in class and just tear it up and throw it in front of there, have some amazingly temper tantrums and explode, etc. And that, I think once they acted that way, it was just being in the moment. Have I had circumstances that have been close calls to say, yep, I've had my fill in the day? And obviously a person of mine, that a friend of mine who's my sponsor, does interventions, and the most stressful one he's had in an intervention, he'll tell you, was intervening on the father. But during the father and son part of it, one of them pulled out a firearm, and then the other one pulled out a firearm, and they both had firearms aimed at each other. And so in that very moment, that was pretty tense. And it was like, wow. So he shared with me that experience was probably the most, and he ended up having both of them go to different treatment centers. But in that moment, they were like, don't call the police, before you called the police, because someone could, pull the hammer. He sat there with them while they had guns pulled on each other in the middle of an intervention. And so I look at, what's been the most challenging experience with resistance that said, I'm over it. You people can just F off. I have tried my best. I have done the best I can, and that's a wrap. Have you had some experiences like that?
Not like that.
Well, not with a gun, not a firearm, but I mean those experiences like, the challenge of somebody, because working at Palmetto, you have 13 years, and I would love to know what your experience, because when I worked there for 7 years, I was a patient there 3 times, and then I came back 5 years later and became and worked there. So I had a lot of respect for the model because I had seen other treatment centers, worked at other treatment centers, and I knew what they provided. And working with other master level clinicians, and then what we can do with the different groups that we had, the fear, cares, and concerns, some of the lectures that we get to create out of our own, gave us creative licensure, if you will, to be able to engage the population. So my experience for me was further development professionally, both professionally and personally, because the staff, to be able to work with everybody together, really meant a lot. Mm-hmm. So what would you say your experience was
with resistance?
Well, we talked about resistance, and then I kind of ADD went off on just being at Palmetto.
My experience with working with the treatment team.
Well, first the clients, but most of all just Palmetto as a whole. Because we weren't getting anywhere with any specific stories. You didn't want to bring up anything. We're not throwing dirt on anybody.
Well, it's just like I've been doing this for so long that a lot of the stories kind of bleed together as far as specifics. And as far as resistance, I've been threatened to be shoved in a barrel and floated out in the bayou.
Those are my favorite. I will kill you.
Yeah. But as far as working with the treatment team, what I like is, Abraham Maslow said that if the only solution you have is a hammer, then every problem begins to look like a nail. And I certainly have my therapeutic approach, and it can certainly be beneficial, but I'm not for everybody. And I have to take my ego out of that, and I have to recognize that sometimes other people have the correct answer. And so listening to other people's perspectives and learning from them, I carry a lot of different therapists within me. I carry inspiration from so many. I stand on the shoulder of giants, as they say. I have been tremendous. I'm going to name some people: Pat Regan, Billy Ledford, Mackley McCurdy, Joanne Lowry, Monetta Givens, and people that I've worked with at Palmetto, you and Lauren Beck and Frank Smith and just Jerry Arnold. So many people that have inspired the hell out of me and given me lots of really awesome tools. So I think that as a therapist, we should all be thieves, and anything that we see that works, we should steal it. And we should also be more than willing to allow other people to steal from us, to steal those techniques. Because what am I going to do, copyright it? How about I just give it out there so other people can help other people get sober,
Okay.
So that's the main thing I've gotten from working from the treatment team is inspiration and technique, and also a place to complain when they get too resistant.
That's great. So a phrase that I used here before that one of my new mentors from Sedona, Arizona, shared with me is that we're all wounded healers. Mm-hmm. And so what you described to me sounded like wounded healers helping wounded healers heal themselves. And so it's kind of like working with somebody that's a client or patient in a medical setting, that they're a wounded healer too, but I'm not here to heal them. they have to heal themselves. So I'm a wounded healer helping a wounded healer heal themselves. I just give some direction, but they have to do the work. And then stealing, we're working together. We're sharing. We're a team and a collective, if you will. And so we're a collective working together to heal or to help others heal in that arena. And it is a war. I mean, it is a war, let's be honest. I was at the last, and my IDD is kicking off because the conference I was just at, they all spoke on the opiate epidemic, and we're praising that we have 20% less fatalities with the opiates, and that's great. Nobody brought up alcohol. Nobody brought up the alcohol fatalities. They said, hey, we've gone from 100,000 a year in opiates to less. And I was like, well, and I interrupted. I said, well, we're not addressing the fact that alcohol fatalities have increased. In fact, it used to be a little over 100,000. Last year, CDC reported as 178,000 fatalities from alcohol, and nobody addressed that. So alcohol, when I say it's a war, that's more than in the military, how many in a war, die in that time per incident. So, I mean, I feel us, advocating, okay, you're bullied. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I see people that are suffering. I want them to not die. Based upon, this is a war based upon my own experience, to be my countertransference. I can't control them, but and I'm not going to try to, but I'll certainly give them what I believe would be most helpful, and hope with light that they will take that and roll with it with some awareness. My experience at Palmetto was to be able to see other people do lectures and learn from them on their styles, their communication, what topics they brought up. The resistance of the clients was, I want to say, kind of to get close with them, but not become close where we're breaking boundaries. And so Palmetto has helped you professionally. Would there be other areas that might speak to a benefit?
Other areas of?
Well, my relationships grew, but I learned from others, because I would I'd go off into, like Jeff Knowles, when he used to work there, he was in my office next to me. I would go next to him and start talking about, personal life stuff. And I had other people that I could do that. It became a family. It became a family. And so I wouldn't be able to go out and speak with somebody, but I could go talk to one of the other counselors that I became close with, enough that I could share if I had issues. So talking about countertransference, I could go into that office and say, hey, I just had an issue with a client. And I mentioned earlier that one of the biggest countertransference things that I experienced was my first ex-wife. I met somebody that reminded me of her. First, I was irritated, and then I found myself attracted. And I was like, "Well, this is a conflict because I'm struggling to communicate because I'm distracted by the memory, and I'm wanting to engage her the way I engaged my ex." And so I had to back up for a second and regroup. And so that was a beautiful thing, to be able to have a resource like that. So it's a family. I guess the benefit was I learned some vulnerability for me by working with some of the others. Because you mentioned, besides Billy Ledford, Patrick Regan, because I used to work with him in a volunteer way at SOAR years ago. For 3 years. And so, I mean, that guy, man, he's an icon to me, a staple in the recovery community professionally. And so I thoroughly value everything he shared with me. So I guess maybe if that wasn't just a bunch of words, I guess what I gained further.
If you want to talk about family in the treatment milieu, when my house flooded in 2016, I had not worked for Pat Regan probably 8 years, something like that, and he heard about it. I think he heard about it from you, possibly, and he was at my house as soon as he possibly could, helping me rebuild my house. And he sacrificed a ton of time and a ton of sweat and energy helping me repair my house. There are good people in this field. And as far as being able, working with therapists, sometimes you're like, God, leave me alone and let me sulk in my issues for a little while. Quit trying to read me, because you have access to so many people that know how to spot it and know how to care and know how to pull it out. And you get so much opportunity to talk about the things that you need to talk about. What other job do you get to talk about your feelings as much as if you're a therapist? I have cried to my boss, Holly, more times than I would like to admit, about things that have happened in my life. So there is definitely a family within the treatment world, and I don't want to just keep promoting Palmetto, but there is definitely a family there, and there are several people at my workplace that if I was really hurting, they'd be amongst the people that I would call.
Well, when you work for a professional treatment program such as this, and since you brought up Holly, I've said it before, she has a very strong maternal role, because I've seen her do more for others, supporting them with direction, than your average managerial position. Mm-hmm. She really has a lot, and when it comes to the clients too, equally. So it's a gift to have that environment, and I want to thank you, by the way, for being vulnerable, as far as being able to share any experiences. Let's say I use the maternal part, or maybe as a friend, mm-hmm. maybe having that compassion area to give us what support we need in that moment, because life has filled with crisis, and we're dealing with crises every day. It can all be extremely overwhelming, and that goes to where's my self-care. We get some self-care at work if it's available. Palmetto had it. Now, I'm saying that just because, one, I know you're there, mm-hmm. you've worked there, I worked there, and I can speak to the availability of such resources, and not every facility has. See, I've worked for other treatment programs, and when I first came to Palmetto, there were a few counselors that talked to me, and they would complain about X, Y, and Z. I said, wow, how many treatment programs have you worked for? Oh, I haven't. Maybe you should, because you have no idea. You have absolutely no idea what a structured environment this is that provides you area to grow. Because I'm just sharing it out there that there's much with extreme chaos, very high turnover, mm-hmm. and just not a lot of, we use the word family. So anyway, I appreciate you bringing that up.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
So your experience at Palmetto, how come you got into the treatment industry? And then for new counselors that are coming out there, if you had any, what's the word I like to use? Any nuggets to share for those that are wanting to get into the field? It was kind of funny. Who was in here? It was funny. Stuart.
Mm-hmm.
Stuart. I said, do you have any thoughts? He goes, don't think about it. Don't even get into it. Go do something else. He's like, well, no, because right now you need to work, as far as the people who get right out of treatment. I want to be a counselor. Yeah, you probably should work on you for a little bit. And I was like, man, that was that was amazing feedback. However, those that are diving into the field, because when you first got into it, I don't know about you, but I had my first trips and falls of walking through and fears. I wondered if there was anything you would want to share for those that are new professionals that would be able to give them some direction, things to consider, and maybe from your own experience.
So I'm going to quote one of the professors from my time at ULM, Dr. Charles Pryor, and he would say, you need to keep in mind that when someone comes to you, they have exhausted all other options, because nobody wants to see a counselor. If someone comes to you, they have tried church, they've tried the bottle, they've tried talking to their spouse, they've tried positive thinking, and they've tried self-help books. They've done every single other thing they could possibly do, because people avoid therapy. They just do. There's a stigma against it, and people feel like it's admitting some kind of inherent weakness. And so keep in mind, they are at the end of their options when they come to you, and you need to treat that with the gravity that it deserves. They are there because they are really hurting, and you need to respect that. I would also advise a new counselor, read and ask your fellow therapists. Ask that one therapist that seems like he's a wizard. Who do I read? And who do I watch videos of? And I would say as much as you can, and sometimes as therapists we get thrown into working before we get a chance to train. Ask to sit in with some senior people and just observe what they do and be that thief. If you see something that works, incorporate it into your toolbox, but also maybe, talk to that therapist and ask them how it works. And I guess those would be the things I would recommend starting off. That, and I'm just going to, every person I've ever trained, I always tell them this, and sometimes they get really offended, like, how dare you, I would never. But don't have sex with your patients. because
Did y'all get that? Do not have sex with your patients.
Don't. Like, if you do, and I hear about it, I will report you, because that's, it's sinister. I will say it. It's sinister. It's wrong. It's depraved. It is predatory. These people let you into their innermost secrets that normally it would take 2 years of dating and 7 years of marriage, and they come to you because they're hurting. And as they are hurting, maybe some of their defenses aren't as stout as they used to be. And you kind of have a direct source into the je ne sais quoi of what makes them the person they are. And it's an unfair advantage. It's like starting a track meet from about 10 yards ahead of all the other runners, and it's just not cool.
Well, they're vulnerable at that time, so the word predatory is accurate. The unfortunate part is it's a form of unawareness. I call it denial, but those new counselors, when getting involved, it's just like alcoholism or any other substance. They're in denial, and they're like, oh, you don't get it. They're the one. I'm like, what? There's a connection, because I understand what they are. That kind of transfers part, and it's part of what I call, like with SLLA, sex, love, addictions. It's like it's part of the codependence of your attraction, and there's a stimuli involved. And I laughed earlier because I'm trying to be light of it, but it's very serious. All disciplines, social work, LMFT, LPCs, and the addictive. The highest rate of disciplinary action is based upon inappropriate relationships, and people are just not aware and don't take what I think, how you worded it, appropriately, which I thought was beautiful. I mean, the gravity of it, and to be really mindful. I appreciate that.
And I take it personal, because you're casting shade on a career that has meant a lot to me. When professionals do that, they are, people hear about that, and it limits the belief that the public has in the profession.
That's right.
So I take it as not just something that you did, but it's something you did to us, the family of clinicians, counselors, social workers, LACs, and so forth, all of us. Not to mention the damage that it does to the patients. That should be first. Not me being self-righteous over here, but.
I'll pick it. So I want to thank you. I'm looking at the time, make sure how are we doing? Oh, well, I'm doing pretty well there. I want to thank you for coming out here today. I know it's a bit of a drive, And I mean, I believe your schedule is. I was going to say the word precious, but it. Well, Lord of the Rings kicked in, but it was like, but your schedule is important, valuable. Important is valuable. So I appreciate you providing some time that we could speak today a little bit.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Like, we didn't talk about it, but I was super nervous about doing this. There was one thing that I prepared for this that I wanted to say.
Yeah.
And maybe since you're really wanting like CITs to hear things,
yeah,
like I came up with my own definition for what therapy is.
Absolutely, please.
To me, therapy is the act of taking people through conversations that they should have had a decade ago. That's all I am. And you can know you're having countertransference issues. The easiest way to spot it is if you're talking more than your client is talking, because you are supposed to be a professional listener. And any kind of therapeutic tool that you do, it's just to knock the rust off of this old issue that should have been talked about. Maybe it wasn't talked about because you grew up in an environment that didn't encourage you to speak. Maybe you just didn't have the emotional vocabulary. Maybe you did try to talk about it and somebody shut you down and said, I don't want to hear that crap. But we are catching up on a conversation that is decades old. And sometimes it looks like, man, that sounds like it hurts. What do you need to tell me about it? And sometimes it's, man, that sounds like it hurts. Are there any other ways that you could look at it that might change the way that it hurts? And sometimes, man, it sounds like that hurt. Stop doing that. Stop picking at it, you know? But it is just, therapy in a nutshell is having the conversations that are outdated and need to be taken care of, to me.
Well, I thought that was perfectly articulated. And I'm glad you brought it up. And are you still nervous?
Well, no, I'm done now.
Well, again, I share thank you so much. In the future, if you're interested in coming back, talk a little bit further, we'd welcome you back. And with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have any questions, again, our sponsor is Palmetto Addiction Recovery Center, and the number is 318-728-2970, located in Rayville, Louisiana, far away, so that you have an area to be isolated.
Mention his information.
Well, Sean's no longer a counselor.
Okay.
So if you want to do some quality assurance, you can speak to that man right there.
But I will say this, because I've been there for so long that I've heard that some people have wigged out like, whoa, what's going on? Why is he leaving? I'm still there. I'm not dead. And the other cool thing about this position is now I have opportunity to be more of service to some of the newer counselors, to answer questions, give feedback, and kind of nurture them, which as I get older in my profession, I'm much more interested in passing along rather than doing. And so I've still got my fingers in some pies. So.
See, you're still advocating, right? Just as you were with the bullies or those that were the recipients thereof, and so the new people, you're still fulfilling your role in an amazingly wonderful, healthy way.
Trying to.
Oh man, I think it's great, man. I think it's fabulous. You're a gift. If no one's told you that, I want to share that with you, man. I think you're an amazing gift.
I appreciate that.
And a gift to present to others. So thank you.
Thank you.
So again, thank everybody for joining our episode today. Next week will be a surprise guest. And for joining and participating with you, I say namaste.